Since the passing of Pope Francis and the ascension of Pope Leo, there have been calls to reset the Vatican's diplomacy with Communist China, particularly the controversial Vatican-China deal approved by Pope Francis and shaped by Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin. Here to tell us what she believes the Vatican needs to do and what this new China policy might look like is Director of the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute, Nina Shea. Nina, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Earlier this month, you wrote a piece in First Things, which was just incredible, titled, "The Pope Needs a Better China Policy." Since that ill-advised and still secret Vatican-China deal, which was instituted in 2018, I'll remind you, it has received a ton of criticism for inexplicably allowing the Chinese Communist authorities input over the appointment of Catholic bishops. The issue came into stark relief in the lead up to this last conclave, given that Cardinal Parolin was one of the prime candidates, who presumably still manages this deal and the agreement. Nina, what is the first thing Pope Leo XIV should do to revise this policy, in your estimation, and what would a better policy look like?
Well, I think that the first thing is to really examine what has happened over the last 7 years since the agreement's been in force with the appointment of bishops. Because what we do know about the deal, it's still secret, the contents are still secret, but we do know, because it has been leaked by Cardinal Parolin, or revealed, that it's to share power in the appointment of bishops. And we do know that the government, the communist, officially atheistic government of China, has the upper hand in this. They have been appointing bishops without the Pope's consent. And in the case of Shanghai, which is the most important Catholic diocese, the largest one, it's the oldest one in China, they have the this Patriotic Association Bishops' Conference president as the bishop, and he appointed himself essentially without the Pope
just even knowing about it. And to give people a sense, and again, this gets so little reportage, Nina, I'm stunned. And I think it's part of the Vatican doesn't want to talk about it, the bishops don't want to talk about it, nobody wants to talk about these suffering people in China. But we have to. You write at least 10 Chinese Catholic bishops are currently in indefinite detention or otherwise restricted in their ministries for opposing the government control over the church. There are also bishops who have died in the past 7 years, and those sees are just vacant. The Vatican and China have only replaced about a dozen of them, and there are, I think, something like 30 bishoprics open, empty.
Yeah.
What is the latest on the detention of these bishops? And is the Vatican at all involved in trying to gain their release?
Well, no, the answer is no. The Vatican is silent on this, and it's worse than silence. They covered it up, and I really want to emphasize this, because when Cardinal Parolin was asked at a press conference in 2020 about persecution of the church, he frankly denied that there was persecution. He said there's only regulation. And he constantly talks about being united, the church, the episcopacy in China is now united. Well, not really, because they don't have a sharing of the mind, because the communists are replacing with their people the papally appointed bishops, who are 10 of whom are, most of them, 9 or so, are in prison. Without indefinite detention, without due process.
No due process at all.
No due process.
They're just rounded up.
They're arrested, taken away, and they're in isolation. We don't know where they are.
Here's the most insidious thing. I mean, something you said I have to pick up on. Parolin may be right. They are all united because they're all Xi apparatchiks. They're all communist officials who have just been overnight, with a wave of Xi's wand, made Catholic bishops. And then the Vatican goes in and approves these things. That's what's so heartbreaking, Nina. Why would they approve and give license to these people who are clearly not Catholic or faithful bishops?
Well, it's an erosion of papal power. It's a ceding of papal power, really, of this, under canon law, the Pope has the duty to appoint, to continue the chain.
Apostolic succession.
Yes, and it's also an erosion of his moral authority and his religious authority. Because think about it, this is syncretism. What's happening with the teaching of the church. When you have communist plants in there, as the new bishop of Shanghai, talking about we're going to open this meeting of clerics, Catholic clerics, in the spirit of the Communist Congress of the 20th Congress,
right.
Communist Congress. It's not.
And they're quoting Xi.
They're quoting Xi Jinping as the president of China in their sermons. They have to. That's what they're told to do now. They have to ban children from the churches. How will they perpetuate the faith? How will they keep the orthodoxy, the magisterium of the teaching authority of the church?
Well, and insidiously, Beijing appointed 2 new bishops to seats already occupied by legitimate Catholic bishops the day after Pope Francis's death, okay, when there was no pope to give an approval, up or down. Nina, aside from our coverage, this is barely mentioned. How do you think Pope Leo should react to these 2 bishop appointments?
Well, I don't think he should approve them. I think he should say that we have bishops there in these dioceses. You've bypassed them. They are in detention. Bishop Zhang in Xinjiang diocese in Henan, he was taken away and hasn't been seen since 2021. He had cancer surgery when he was recuperating from that when they took him. He is still alive. He's still the bishop there. And then in Shanghai, the same thing was the other appointment was for Shanghai. There are 2 bishops now who are living and who have been papally approved, who served with the government's permission briefly. In one case, it was less than a day. The other, but he was a member of the Patriotic Association. He has now been in prison for 11, 12 years in a seminary, isolated,
Wow.
and cannot serve as his ministry at all.
And just so people can understand, what this means is there was an authentically appointed and consecrated bishop. We're going back to the 90s in one of these cases, 91, I believe, he was appointed bishop, right?
It was 2011 and 2012 in Shanghai.
Okay, that most recent.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, these are bishops of vintage. They didn't just show up yesterday. They've been disappeared, and in their place, the communist authorities have appointed new bishops. And the Vatican is poised to accept them. This is unbelievable. And the fact that the Vatican is accepting the cover-up and the repression of the church in China. Nina, what are your hopes for reform? I mean, Pope Leo does have a great opportunity here to do something different.
Yes, and he has so much stature at this moment. This is the time to do it. The whole world is full of goodwill for him. And he also has been to China. He's one of the few popes ever to have been to China. He has had their order, the Augustine order, has a presence there and has had it for a long time. They first went there in the 16th century. So, and Pope Leo XIII told them to go back in the 19th century into China, the Augustinians,
so there's a
as
history
well as
here
others.
of Prevost, of current Pope Leo.
So he was presumably as a prior, a general prior, visiting those people in Hunan province in the south. But we really don't know what he did or who he met there. But that was up until 2013. He has some feel for China. He knows something about the place. And I think that he should bargain with them and a real, give and take, a real negotiation, and say, I want my bishops out of detention and filling those positions.
Yeah, no, call attention to it.
Yes,
I mean, if Trump has taught them anything, negotiating with the Chinese, you got to call their bluff. You got to make them hurt a little bit publicly in the public sphere.
In the public sphere, and at the same time, Raymond, I think that he has to revive the underground. There has been an underground there, and there's one hanging on.
What would that look like?
Well, in the last papacy, we saw them derided and ridiculed, being called by the Vatican envoy to Hong Kong of people having psychological barriers because they wouldn't join the Communist Party. And think about this. The Patriotic Association of Bishops, which is the communist structure to oversee and control these bishops, is part of the United Front Work Department of the Communist Party. So it's the propaganda arm of the Communist Party. And those who refused to join it and to express, to pledge their independence from the papal authority, that is the pledge that's required for this, were derided as having psychological barriers, being stubborn. And another thing that's often said is it's just people who feel bad that we should honor those who had suffered in the past so much. It's still going on. The suffering is happening today. This is a human rights issue. And it's also, it's a human rights crisis when you think about it. A sizable portion of the Catholic Church leadership in detention, more than any other country in the world, has more bishops in detention.
Unbelievable.
And when you have Cardinal Parolin saying that this is a good agreement, it's working well, it doesn't ring true.
It's unbelievable. The more I read about it, the more I learn about it, the more I hear from people suffering under it, the angrier and more upset I get, I have to tell you, Nina, which is partially why I wanted you to come and explain to the audience. But Hong Kong authorities have proposed the creation of a mechanism that would allow mainland China to exercise jurisdiction over national security cases based on a clause in the national security law imposed by Beijing. The move would open the door to pursuing complex cases across the border. It's believed that Jimmy Lai's case would fall under this complex case rule. What do you know of this situation, and what's the latest with Jimmy Lai's trial? His son, Sebastian's going to be joining us next week.
Yeah, he's still on trial after a year and a half, and it's not expected to wrap up until the fall. Maybe his son has more information, but that's what I know. This law was presented by the local Hong Kong government to the legislature, which the Legislative Council, which rubber stamps the government's proposals now. That's the custom. So this will probably go through. This will go through. Make no, have no doubt this will go through. And this means that Jimmy Lai and people like him will be before a kangaroo court and will be sentenced to, maximum penalty. They will show no mercy because that's their motto. And he might end up in a prison for the rest of his life, disappeared like these bishops.
Right.
Bishop Sue, since 1997 has been, and he was the one they're referring to. 1997, right. Bishop James Sue.
Unbelievable.
He hasn't been seen since he was taken away by the Chinese government in 1997 and put in a prison without a trial.
It's outrageous. Well, we have to keep the attention of the world on all this. Nina Shea, I'm so glad you do. Nina Shea, thank you for being here. We will leave it there. You can find Nina's reporting on the persecution of Christians worldwide by visiting Hudson.org.